Welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share with you a story about silent heartbreak, the unbearable weight of loving someone stuck in the past, and the quiet courage it takes to walk away from what never truly began. Let's dive right into it. If you had asked me a year ago what love looked like, I would have said it was quiet moments filled with laughter, the smell of coffee in the morning, and someone who makes your soul feel seen. I thought I found that in Caleb. We met at a community art workshop. I was there on a whim, hoping to brush up on my oil painting skills, while Caleb was sculpting a face so hauntingly beautiful I couldn't look away. He had this calm aura, like someone who had lived 100 lives but still found beauty in the little things. He wasn't loud or flashy. He barely even smiled that day. But when he did, it was like watching the moon rise over still water. We struck up a conversation during a break. He complimented the way I painted hands, something I always felt insecure about. And just like that, I was pulled into his orbit. There was something mysterious about him, a soft sadness behind his eyes, like he was carrying something heavy but refused to let it drop. I asked about his work, and he said, "I make people from memory. It's the only way I can keep them alive." That should have been my first clue. In the beginning, it was gentle. Caleb was thoughtful in the way he spoke, slow to share but always listening intently. I found myself wanting to fill in his silences with pieces of me, my stories, my dreams, my fears. He never judged. If anything, he encouraged vulnerability. I remember one night, we sat in his tiny living room surrounded by clay dust and half-finished sculptures. I told him about my father's sudden death when I was 17, and how I still sometimes dream about him standing at the foot of my bed, saying nothing. Caleb just looked at me and said, "Grief lingers in the spaces people leave behind." It felt profound, like I wasn't alone in carrying ghosts. But it wasn't long before his ghost started showing up between us. One night, over a late dinner at my place, I asked him why he never stayed over. We had been seeing each other for nearly 3 months. We'd shared stories, kissed like we meant it, and even talked about taking a trip together. But the moment things started feeling solid, he'd pull away. Caleb looked at me and said, "I was engaged once. I remember setting my fork down, suddenly not hungry anymore. She cheated on me with someone I considered family. After that, I don't trust easily." There it was, the story behind the sadness. I didn't press. I told him I was sorry, and he nodded like he'd heard it before. But his walls? They didn't lower. If anything, they grew taller. In hindsight, I think I saw him not as he was, but as who he could be if someone just loved him enough. I thought I could be that person, the one who stayed when others left, the one who proved love didn't have to hurt. And so, I stayed. I stayed when he forgot plans we'd made. I stayed when he disappeared for days, only to return with a simple, "I needed space." I stayed when he told me he couldn't say "I love you" because the last time he did, it nearly destroyed him. I told myself patience was love, that healing wasn't linear, that he just needed time. What I didn't realize was, his wounds had become his comfort zone. The more I gave, the less he tried. It was like he was always holding back, keeping one foot out the door, ready to run if things got too real. But I kept hoping that one day he'd look at me not as a risk, but as a home. But hope is a funny thing. It can be the light that guides you, or the fire that burns you alive. And the night I saw her name in his sketchbook, everything changed. The sketchbook had always been sacred territory. At least, that's how Caleb made it seem. He never let me flip through it without him present. "Some things in there aren't ready to be seen," he once said, half joking, half serious. But that night, he left it open on the coffee table while he took a long shower. We'd just had one of those evenings where everything felt almost normal. We cooked together, laughed over a spilled glass of wine, and curled up on the couch like we were a couple who'd been doing this for years. Maybe that's why I let my curiosity win. At first, it was harmless. Page after page of hauntingly beautiful sketches, faces full of expression, hands grasping at nothing, eyes that seemed to follow you. Then I saw her. She was sketched in charcoal, sitting cross-legged in the grass, head tilted back in laughter. It wasn't the drawing that stopped me. It was the caption underneath. Lena, as she was before she broke me. I froze. There were more. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all tucked between newer pages. Lena dancing, Lena sleeping, Lena crying. One sketch showed her curled on Caleb's chest, sleeping, with the words, "The last time I felt whole." I stared at it until the lines blurred. It was like walking into a shrine he never mentioned, a shrine he never dismantled, a shrine he still worshipped. When Caleb came out of the shower, towel slung around his neck, he saw the sketchbook in my lap and stopped cold. The way his jaw clenched told me everything. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said flatly. "I noticed," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He sat down slowly, his eyes scanning mine. "It's not what you think, isn't it?" I whispered. "You say you can't move on because of what she did to you, but it seems like you never even tried." Caleb looked away. "I kept those sketches because they remind me of what love used to feel like." "That's not love, Caleb. That's fixation." He didn't answer, just stared at the wall like it had more to say than I ever could. The silence between us that night was different. Not the comfortable kind, not the respectful quiet of two souls healing, but a suffocating void, filled with everything unsaid. I didn't sleep. I lay beside him and stared at the ceiling, feeling like an intruder in my own life. The next morning, he acted like nothing happened, made coffee, kissed my forehead, asked if I wanted to walk to the farmer's market. I went along with it because I wasn't ready to confront the truth. But the truth had already started to unravel things inside me. I became hyper-aware of how he never used my name in sketches, of how he touched me absent-mindedly, as if going through the motions, of how he compared everything to his past without realizing it. One afternoon, while helping him organize his studio, I found an old box labeled "Letters, Unsent." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Each one was addressed to Lena. They weren't angry. They weren't desperate. They were reverent, grateful, reminiscent. Pages and pages of words he had written but never sent, still holding her like a precious memory rather than a person who betrayed him. I remember clutching one letter in my hands, my chest tightening with something between sadness and rage. It said, "Even after everything, I still dream of the way your hand fit into mine. I don't know how to let go of something that once made me feel infinite." That was the moment I knew Caleb didn't want to let go. It wasn't that he couldn't, it wasn't that he was broken. It was that he chose to stay broken because healing meant surrendering a version of love that once made him feel alive. And he wasn't ready to trade that illusion for someone real. For me, still, I didn't leave. Not yet, because somewhere deep down, I still believed I could be the reason he changed. But what happened at the art show shattered that belief completely. The night of the art show was supposed to be special. It was Caleb's first public exhibition in over a year. He had been working obsessively for weeks, pouring himself into clay and canvas like a man possessed. I watched him disappear into his work, hands stained with color, eyes glazed with something close to obsession. I told myself it was passion, that he was simply nervous, that this meant a lot to him. But I never asked what he was actually creating. The gallery was buzzing when we arrived. Friends, fellow artists, and curious strangers filled the space. Warm light spilled across the white walls, where Caleb's pieces stood like echoes of a soul I was still trying to understand. I stayed close to him, my hand brushing against his, until he peeled away to greet a mentor. I wandered the room, sipping cheap wine and smiling at compliments about Caleb's depth and his ability to capture vulnerability. Then I saw her. Not Lena, but her face, molded in clay, larger than life. 3 sculptures, side by side, each showing her at different emotional states: joy, sorrow, rage. The captions were minimal: devotion, destruction, divinity. I stared, throat dry, heart pounding. Every curve of the cheek, every slope of the jawline, I knew it was her, even if I had never met her in real life. I had seen enough sketches, enough letters, enough fragments of his obsession to recognize her. And then I heard it. 2 older women chatting beside me. "Isn't that the ex-fiancé? Lena something. She was the muse behind his last series, too. Tragic story. Yes. I heard he still writes about her. Poor thing. He's never been the same. They giggled. As if this pain had become part of his brand. As if I wasn't standing there. Invisible. Replaced. I turned and found Caleb watching me. He didn't smile. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded. As if he expected me to understand. I walked out. I didn't say a word. I didn't make a scene. I simply left the gallery and started walking. Heels clacking against the pavement like punctuation marks in a sentence I wasn't ready to finish. He didn't come after me. Not that night. He texted the next morning. I'm sorry you saw it that way. But that series was part of my healing. Healing. Is that what it was? Because to me, it looked like resurrection. He had resurrected her, glorified her, rebuilt her into something holy, untouchable, eternal. And I was just a shadow watching from the pews. I didn't respond. For days. He didn't reach out again. When he finally did, it was with the same tone he used when explaining why he couldn't commit, or why he needed space. I'm not ready to let go. I wish I could be different. But I'm not, and I realized he wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for permission to stay broken. I sat with that for a long time. I thought about the hours I'd spent listening, comforting, showing up. I thought about all the times I justified his coldness, his distance, his absence. I thought about the version of love I was trying to build, and how he never planned to move in. And then, quietly, I made a choice. I didn't leave with fireworks or closure. I left with a whisper. And it was that silence that finally made him notice something was missing. The day I left, I didn't pack a suitcase or slam a door. I just stopped showing up. I didn't reply to his late-night messages. I didn't respond when he tagged me in old photos or sent me voice notes filled with silence and half-meant apologies. I deleted his contact, blocked his socials, not out of anger, but because I finally understood that some people don't heal because they don't want to. They find comfort in their pain. It becomes their identity. And I was done trying to compete with a ghost. The hardest part wasn't losing Caleb. It was losing the version of me who believed love could fix everything. That if I just gave enough, waited long enough, loved deeply enough, he would choose me. But he never did. He chose memories. He chose safety. He chose her. Even now, I don't think Caleb is a bad person. He's a man who loved deeply, got hurt, and built a museum around that pain. He made it beautiful, sure, but he locked himself inside it. And I spent months trying to find a key to a door he never intended to open. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. No, because I learned that love isn't about fixing someone. It's not about carrying their wounds until your own back breaks. It's about walking beside someone who wants to heal, who chooses you, not just needs you to fill the silence. After Caleb, I stopped dating for a while. I traveled alone. I visited coastal towns where no one knew my name. I painted again, not hands, but landscapes, messy, vivid, unfiltered. I sat in cafes and eavesdropped on strangers falling in love, falling apart, falling silent, and somehow, in the echoes of other people's stories, I started reclaiming my own. One night, in a tiny bookstore by the sea, I met someone. Not someone to fall in love with, not yet, but someone who asked me what my favorite book was and actually waited for the answer. Someone who didn't carry sadness like armor, but wore curiosity like a second skin. We talked about old poetry and bad coffee, and how endings don't always mean failure. They can mean freedom. I smiled for real that night. Not the kind you force when trying to be enough for someone, but the kind that bubbles up when you finally feel seen, not just needed. I don't know if I believe in soulmates anymore, but I do believe in timing. And sometimes, the most important love story is the one you write with yourself. I don't resent Caleb. I don't mourn what could have been, because in losing him, I found a version of myself that refuses to be a placeholder for someone else's pain. And that, to me, is a love story worth telling. For a while, everything was too quiet. No texts at midnight. No clay dust in the air. No long stares into nothing while waiting for someone to choose me. I thought I would miss him more. thought I'd ache in places that had once been filled with his words. But what surprised me wasn't the absence of Caleb. It was the presence of peace. It was the first time in months I didn't have to wonder whether I was too much or not enough. I could eat dinner without thinking if he'd cancel last minute. I could sit on my porch, legs curled under me, and read for hours without checking my phone for a reply that might never come. I started journaling again, not about love or loss, but about things I'd forgotten I loved. Color theory, art history. The way jazz makes a rainy afternoon feel cinematic. I found old sketches of mine buried under months of dust and doubt. They were clumsy but bold. They reminded me of who I was before I became a footnote in someone else's story. Healing, I learned, is not some grand rebirth. It's mundane. It's watering a plant every morning, even if you forget sometimes. It's making your bed. It's choosing tea instead of texting. It's taking a deep breath when you hear a name that used to make your heart skip. It's realizing one day that you are the one who has stopped looking back. I saw Caleb again, 6 months later. I didn't plan to. He walked into a local gallery while I was chatting with the new curator. I recognized his silhouette before his face. He hadn't changed. Still in worn boots and that soft gray sweater, but his eyes, they flickered when they saw me, like he hadn't prepared for the moment I'd be standing there. Completely unshaken, he smiled. Tentative, I nodded. Polite. He came over. Hey, Emily. Hey, Caleb. Silence. Then he said, You look really good. I thanked him, told him I was doing well, and I meant it. He hesitated. I've been thinking about you a lot. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask what for. That was no longer my role to play. Instead, I smiled softly and said, I hope you're doing the work. He looked confused. The work, I repeated. To stop romanticizing your grief and start rebuilding yourself without her. He stared at me, words trapped behind his tongue. I didn't wait. I wish you peace, Caleb. I said, but I'm no longer your sanctuary. And I walked away. It wasn't dramatic. There was no swelling music or tearful goodbye. Just me, reclaiming space I once gave away for free. That moment didn't bring closure. It brought clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is far more powerful. But love has a funny way of circling back when you're not looking for it. And just when I thought I'd sworn it off completely, someone walked into the bookstore with a crooked smile and a heart wide open. His name was Theo. We met in the least romantic place imaginable, wedged between two overstocked shelves in the back of a used bookstore. I was reaching for a worn copy of Letters to a Young Poet when his hand bumped mine. Sorry, he said, flashing an apologetic grin. Didn't mean to steal your epiphany. I laughed, genuinely. It had been a long time since someone made me laugh like that. He offered the book to me with a small bow. Ladies first. And just like that, something shifted. Theo wasn't extraordinary in the way Caleb had been. He wasn't wrapped in mystery or carrying an invisible weight, begging to be saved. He was present, warm, uncomplicated in the most refreshing way. He asked questions and actually listened. He didn't flinch when I mentioned I'd been in love before, didn't romanticize my pain or turn it into poetry. He just sat with it. With me, our conversations felt like open windows on spring mornings, light, honest, and full of possibility. We talked about books, childhood scars, our weirdest dreams. He told me about his fear of flying and how he once tried to overcome it by watching snakes on a plane. It didn't work. We didn't rush anything. No declarations, no expectations, just shared moments, coffee, conversations, silence that wasn't heavy. One night, I found myself telling him about Caleb, about the art show, the letters, the clay woman worshipped like a goddess. Theo didn't interrupt. He didn't offer pity or try to fix anything. He simply said, It's brave, what you did, walking away from someone you still loved. That's not weakness, that's clarity. And I knew in that moment, I had healed, not because I found someone new, but because I could talk about the past without wanting to return to it. Because I no longer needed to be chosen to feel worthy. Because I had stopped trying to resurrect what was already buried. Caleb was a lesson, a beautiful, Heartbreaking lesson. Theo was a maybe, but more importantly, I was okay with the maybe. I didn't need certainty to feel whole. I had built that wholeness myself. Brick by brick, tear by tear, morning by morning. I'm not here to tell you I found a fairy tale. I'm here to tell you I found myself. That's the love story no one talks about enough. The one where you come home to your own heart, scarred but still beating, still open, still full of wonder. And if someone happens to walk beside you on that path, not to carry you, not to complete you, but simply to witness your becoming, then maybe, just maybe, that's enough. So if you're reading this, wondering whether to stay, whether to fight for someone who won't even meet you halfway, let me tell you, you are not a project. You are not a therapist in disguise. You are a soul worthy of being loved in the present, not through the lens of someone's past. And that kind of love, it starts with you. Thanks for tuning in to Reddit Stories. New tales drop daily drama, love, or ghostly glories. Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss the next story we tell. Got thoughts to share? Drop them below. We read them all just so you know.